the biometric and voice data. So the biometric data being captured in various ways, in typical business. So, and then the voice related data. So this is a third dimension. So when it comes to people's analytics, it is a combination of all these aspects. It's not only one aspect, but all these aspects, plus it's being kind of built upon strong data dissecting platforms, like maybe visualization aids, like maybe Power BI, DevExpress, Tableau, any other mechanisms plugged in with machine learning and deep learning abilities. Like so, like you incorporate these platforms with the data set that you have, and then finally you will gain groundbreaking insights of a user, or maybe a trends pertaining to a different aspect which we are not seeing, only if you consider its same data. So as a model, if you really look at the people analytics, is basically driven by the internal data, the HCM data, then the business data and the behavioral data, plus the data that we derive after analyzing using various tools and techniques. So this is all in all about, as we talk about a model. So it's this is the model of people analytics that we could currently use. Because why I say currently use, because this is changing pretty fast. So maybe next few months the model can change, so that we will have a different aspect of how we are looking into people analytics. Then what are key benefits? The first benefit is that it will help the organization to plan on retention, maybe early mornings, prevent top performer leaving, things like that. Then suitability. So the job fit analysis, maybe like job fit and person fit analysis, and targeting candidates with right attitude who suited for a job within an organization with a great potential. And another one is insights. It's basically uncovering insights, correlations using different data models. Because sometimes we assume certain correlations, but now with people analytics, we have come across various tools and platforms where this hypothesis can be proven with certain data models. And the next one is productivity boost, because it's basically the people analytics, the outcomes help organization in upskilling and reskilling the employees based on the needs of the organization and their job role, and the KPI driven performance and KPI driven and its performance based compensation. So it helps achieving all these objectives, while it brings a lot of transparency to the managers and also to the employees. So it will help them to boost their productivity and reach the next target. And diversity, equity, and inclusion business goals. So it helps to understand whether we are in balance of all these aspects. Because if you talk about DIE, it's a huge area, but how far we are actually aligning to the business goals of diversity, equity, and engagement is being measured through the people analytics. The next key benefit would be the wellness, because the wellness is again a newer trend that organizations adopt as part of employee well-being. So the sentiments, motivational KPIs, and work patterns and happiness. So these are some of the key outcomes that we could analyze through the people analytics. So whereby, like, when you have sentiments, we know like the net promoter score from employees are positive or negative, which leads to the motivation factor as well. Ultimately, it relates to the quality of work. And then the work patterns, where we could understand the red flags, where by understand different patterns. And then again, the happiness, where the employees are happy at work, or whether they are happy at the start of the work, or whether they are stressed. So these are some of the other wellness indicators where organization can productively use to gain much better productivity with their employees. And then mobility. So it's basically understanding the current and future mobility requirements of an employee. So mobility in terms of not really geographic, but then again, like, from the career point of view as well. So that's one aspect from career point of view. The next aspect would be in a job location point of view. And then how far we are going to fulfill using the KPIs. The last key benefit would be the integrity, because it's the data helps you to derive on decisions which are unbiased, and it's always evidence-based and self-driven, transparent, and it's measurable. So it's visible for everyone. So it's not only one person having data and he's the powerful person, sort of. Everyone is having an equal play here, so that everyone get measured equally and it's unbiased. So that's one of the biggest advantages that we see in using effective people analytic model. So what are the future and tech predictions of this? Because the analytic area is developing pretty fast. So there are so many tech insights, and there are so many compliance regulatory insights that are in place, which we need to keep tab of. The first one is use of AI. So the AI adoption is pretty fast and pretty strenuous, as we see right now. So it will help to reshape the data science model, and then to infuse more machine learning and AI tools with the use of large data models. Because in right now we are using large data models with algorithms that are available in market, but with AI coming in, it will kind of realign this. It will kind of provide more insights or more accurate way of kind of modeling the data. So that's one of the biggest advantages. The next one is bringing the social data. So which is a huge amount of data of employees which relies outside of your work network. So how do we get this information? So this is again a critical insight. If we could really bring that information in and blend those information with the HCM data. So there are data models which helps to integrate the social data platforms and understand the needs and wants of the employees. So that's another tech involvement in people analytic area. The next one is the ability to forecast or the forecast accuracy. Even though right now we do forecasting, the large data model mechanisms are kind of revamping their models every day so that we can gain better understanding and better accuracy with our forecast. So, and it gives more ability to kind of really analyze the data sets and provide even minute patterns which we really don't see in our day-to-day life. The last one is ethics. So with data, there are so many ethical problems that are arising in the world. I mean, like sometimes without knowing that your information being gathered by someone else. So that we have seen in a lot of our day-to-day kind of browsing or social media activities, we have seen our data being kind of used. But when it comes to more professional and people analytic platform point of say, like we have to understand what we should and what we shouldn't. So there are a lot of compliance regulatories are coming into picture, like say, for example, GDPR, where it ensures the privacy of data of an individual. So how as a practice or how as business owners, we should use effective people analytics while supporting the privacy laws. So there again, it's a challenge, but we have to adhere to this global ethics while providing other models to satisfy the needs of the analytics as well. Say now, a lot of people are adapting the concept of getting consents of users. So that's different. There are different ways like that to understand and kind of mitigate the negative impact of being unlawful when it comes to capturing data. So these are some of the areas that actually we have to keep in mind when it comes to understanding the people analytic usage across different businesses. So having said that, so what are the challenges in adapting people analytics? I mean, like, even though we talk about this lot, we have seen very little adaptation. So why there are little adaptation? One is the focus. That means we have to understand the ultimate objective of deploying a people analytic framework. It's not just to derive certain charts, maybe certain trends or something like that, but you have to have some key objectives while you are kind of having a people analytic framework. Then only you can align your primary data sources, business data, biometric, and other data sources properly to satisfy your core business goals. The next one is the literacy, because this is a key, another key contributor. So literacy in terms of having, ensuring that we have quality data. So, I mean, like, we have seen in systems like people sometimes maintain data which are only essential for the business, but there are so many other data points which they don't maintain. So if you want to have a proper data people analytic framework, you need to ensure like you maintain quality data, a large volume, and for a good period of time. Then only you can use these large data modeling mechanisms to properly dissect the information. So having high literacy rate, which means the quality of data, capturing quality of data, is again important. The next one is data gaps. So we have to understand when it comes to business processes, there can be certain data gaps. Some data may be missing, some data is not really relevant. So these data gaps needs to be ironed out. So that's again a tedious task, but if you really want, you have to iron out these data gaps. The next one is data silos. So which means, like, in an organization where you don't have a ERP, even if you have ERP, some data sources may be in silos. So it's important to see how you could really integrate, or how you could adapt a platform where it provides the ability to integrate and talk to each of these silos and get better data insights, so that they can analyze your central system. Because based on the business, we can't expect everybody to have a single data source. So the data can be in silos, but it's important to see how we could integrate these silos together so that we will achieve our ultimate business objective. So ethics is basically internally we have to have a proper governing practice and to get the buy-in for adoption, because end users also has to have a credibility and trust on what organization do when it comes to capturing data. So being transparent on the data capturing ethics is also important. And finally, stakeholder buy-in. So it's again an important factor where the stakeholders or business champions has to have a credibility on the people analytics, and then their blessing is required to so that the people on the other levels will kind of motivate to be engaged in the overall data capturing and quality data management activities. So these are some of the challenges where some organizations mitigate, or some organizations are trying to mitigate, but all in all, like, you need to stand somewhere, or you have to achieve certain objectives to a great extent to have a good outcome at the end of the day. Then again, why you should adopt a people analytics strategy? There are a few points. One is now hybrid practice. So with pandemic, so organizations go on into remote practice, and then now we are back to hybrid practice. So the proper people analytic framework will help you to have KPIs, early warning mechanisms, and other correlations which will help the organization to have successful hybrid practices within the organization. The next one is the transparency. So decisions are informed, so no one can question because it's evidence-based, and it's also self-driven. And it's future enabled, which means it helps organization to derive on forecasting, and you can deploy predictive models with key recommendations. So it will help the organization to have certain futuristic decisions based on the current and history-related patterns. And fairness, it's well-balanced DEI practices, business-based practices. So it enables organization to have a fair practice. Then engagement. So you can use the social data and really evaluate and see whether your employees are having positive or negative remarks of the organization or its business practices. So you, as a term, you would say like employee net promoter score. Then low churn. So this is very straightforward. So if we identify the early warnings, and if we identify certain patterns, then organization can proactively work with the people where they want to retain and take positive measures. And finally, work culture. So people analytics always based on skills-driven work culture, which means it always based on employees' performance data, skills, and other improvement data and other KPIs. So it's a different work culture altogether, whereby it will help the organization to have more data-driven work culture, which is again a positive note for the organization. All right. So now, as a product, how we kind of gear up in this people analytic game? So we have different aspects where we will help organization to become more productive in the analytics area. The first one would be enterprise analytics, where it's a decision-making cockpit tool for top-level managers. And then the predictive analytics, where it encourage organization to see into future, like the potentials and other turnover measurements. Then wellness dashboards to see whether employees are really happy or whether there are certain indicators where we have to worry about. Then interactive analytics is a platform for dissecting data and to go more detail into granular level analytics. Then domain-specific dashboards are like, KPIs and operational dashboards, which are more specific to different business areas in HR. And then regular reporting and analytic tools. And there are upcoming certain other elements which help you in future, which are namely the analytical framework. So this is a new tool that we are bringing. So it's a top-down approach in business KPI to HR KPI correlation, then data mining, and then sentiment analytics. So from when it comes to people's HR, so these are the kind of elements that we would help you as a client or as a user to be effective in your people analytic journey. So at very high level, so the enterprise dashboard, as I said, like kind of a cockpit dashboard for the top tier organization. So where it includes over 600 KPIs at present, and then wellness dashboard, all to do with the employee happiness and happiness related KPIs, early warnings. So more than 20 to 25 KPIs. So this is just a highlight of those. And then predictive analytics, we provide 3 types of analytics: turnover, absenteeism, and attendance related predictions. So early warnings and turnovers, then pattern-based absenteeism, then again attendance predictions, so that based on your seasonal fluctuations, you can analyze and see whether you have the sufficient cadres. So there are so much of things that you could do using this predictive analytics as well as part of the people analytic framework. So finally, as PeoplesHR, we support people analytic framework, not only using one data source, but there are many data sources. So as a platform, we have the capability to integrate all these data sources together. So which means, like, if you could remember earlier, I told about the data silos, which is not practical to have a single source because of the nature of the business. But the People's HR as a platform has the capability to integrate all these in different ways. It can be either APIs or Excel-based or any different mechanisms, so that we can use our interactive analytical platforms to dissect the data combined with HR data. So as main sources, one, we have our own People's HR as a HCM, then the surveys. So we have a built-in comprehensive survey engine where you can run regular surveys and other engagement surveys and dipstick surveys. So you will have the information of those. Then the Jura, so the People's HR social platform where we deploy so that you can collect a lot of employee sentiments through the contributions of the employees in this platform. Then we can deploy the mobile app to get the employee wellness data, plus the external integrations. So which is again a very important fact, because external integrations is a must to have a really good people's analytic framework. All right, so that's all on what I have to discuss on people's analytics. So it's a really interesting area, but you need to have a really good discipline in managing your data. And then again, like, you need to have very quality data for a longer period of time. But with blended practices, with People's HR and other integrated tools, you can really master the people, and it can have really good business gains. All right. So if you have any questions from the audience, Vishwa, we can take those in.
Yes, Asita. We have a few questions that we have received on chat. So to start with, there's a question on employee well-being and mental health analytics. How can organizations use data to monitor and support employee well-being, especially in areas related to mental health and stress?
All right. So, say for example, we can now, when it comes to employee well-being, contributing factors would be fatigue or stress, or maybe a general happiness in that sense. So, what we can do basically now, one aspect would be capturing happiness. So, it's very straightforward. On time to time, we can enable users to capture happiness. The other one is you can use the biometric to capture the biometric data and blend with the people's chart, so that, let's say, for example, during a shift, we use a wristband to capture the biometric, and then during the shift, we can analyze the change of the biometric data and to understand whether how much the shift is kind of impacting the psychological behavior of a person. So which again will derive at the end of the day for the quality of the materials that they produce during the shift. So we can generate that information.
Right. Hope that answers that question. Next, we have a question on the impact of RPA on employee roles. How does the introduction of RPA impact the roles and responsibilities of employees, and how can people analytics be used to monitor and manage this transition?
All right. So RPA is, let's say, in a very simple term, it's mimicking the human ability and kind of logically repeating the same thing using a bot. So that's in very nutshell, what is RPA means. But when it comes to the people analytics, the one aspect of the people analytics, if you could really see, is from the business centric side, is the errors, downtimes, and the frauds and anomalies. So when it comes to RPA, the use of RPA will eliminate all of that, because the RPA would mimic the human capability and do certain business transactions where the anomalies, errors, and downtime will not be there. So in comparison to what we really do as a person, as against RPA, when we have the people analytics, you can actually kind of validate that hypothesis, and you can really see that.
Okay, Asitha. Next up, I'll be taking these questions pretty quickly. So next, what are some practical examples of how organizations have successfully used people analytics to improve their employee retention rates and overall workforce productivity?
Okay. Say for example, now if you once you deploy the predictive analytics as part of the people analytics, so they it will provide based on the employees' history, the patterns and the history of the employees, it will provide a predictable percentage whether the person is leaving or whether the person is retaining with the organization. So with that, you will see whether the person is a high potential person or whether they have like performance gaps or any other business risks. So the potential parameters, when we blend with the turnover, you will really understand whether there is a need for retaining or whether is it a okay thing. So that's one way to use predictive science in retaining the turnover or lowering the churn. What's the next part of that question, Vishwa?
It's related to workforce productivity. How can
Yes,
people
of course.
analytics improve?
So yes,
Yeah.
of course. Now, people analytics is basically to do with all KPIs, right? So these KPIs can be business-centric KPIs, or maybe manufacturing-related KPIs. So based on the KPIs, we can have the thresholds. So using a tool like enterprise dashboards, we can see whether the thresholds being met or whether those are being kind of at which level those have been kind of met against the threshold values. So with that, we can understand whether the business is moving as per what we have planned.
Okay, Asita. The next question is also in the similar train of thought. Is there any mechanisms by which we could analyze the turnover along with employee skill categories? That's the question, Asita.
Yes, basically now, separate. Yes, now employee skill category would be the proficiency levels in one way, or maybe the way that you have categorized the employees within the organization, right? So in HCM, we have these categorizations, plus we have the proficiency levels. So when the turnover prediction highlight or uh, generate the red light for these employees, then it will actually show whether these are high potential employees or whether these employees are kind of employees that we really wanted them to let go. So it will help, like, category wise, you can see this data because the data is already available. So if you want to further dissect the data, you can use a platform like Power BI or DevExpress so that you can further drill down to see the employee behavioral parameters or any other parameters where you can further analyze and see.
Okay, Asita. This is our last question for this session since we are over time by 5 minutes. So even I was saving my question for the last. So I wanted to ask you about ChatGPT platforms like ChatGPT and Bard, and to which extent can they be used in people analytics. So we have a question from Chaturanga who's asking, what's the plan to integrate with ChatGPT, I mean people analytics with ChatGPT to help analysis and employee engagement, and if yes, what are the use cases planned?
Okay. Say for example, I really don't have use case there, but when it comes to ChatGPT, it's all about you. ChatGPT reflects upon the data that we feed in. So it will kind of a training model and it will reflect the responses, future responses based on the data that we already feed in. So when it comes to an analytic, like when you generate that data, if we feed into a GPT-based model, once we relate that data again, it will provide the similar patterns. Say, for example, if you have sales data, and when the sales data being fed into GPT with some patterns, then the GPT will do a relearning, and when we again send a similar response to GPT, it will provide like these are the recommended kind of outcomes based on its previous learnings. So that's one way that we could use GPT with some of the data points. But then again, like, GPT usage is pretty vast, because like when it comes to sentiments, we can always see whether the sentiments can be positive or can be negative based on the previous learnings by the GPT when we link the GPT with platforms like Jura.
Oh, okay. So in terms of customizing it depending on the different organization sentiments, that can be done with ChatGPT, right?
That can be done, because as a product, what we are always do, Rishwa, we kind of generalize a model so that the organization can parameterize based on their needs of the business.
Okay, I see that. Okay. Okay. So since we are running a bit over time, we'll be ending the Q&A session. Thank you so much, Asitha. It was a very insightful session. And thank you for everyone who joined the webinar. See you soon with yet another episode on the Papers HR Talk. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Rishwa. Yeah, thank you, Rishwa, and thank you all. And it's great to have a chat here. All right. Thank you very much.